She didn't flash her badge. Not yet. In a town like Fairhill, South Carolina, silence was louder than sirens, and Celeste Dawkins could already hear it screaming. One patrol car. One porch curtain shifting. One false step. She wasn't just a federal agent on assignment. She was a disruption wrapped in professionalism. The kind this town had learned to fear, not respect. Her job? Investigate from the inside. Her danger? They were already watching, and they had no idea who she really was. But they'd find out. Just not the way they expected. Celeste Dawkins sat motionless in her rented SUV as the GPS whispered, "You've arrived." Across the street, a lone patrol car didn't budge. The engine ticked as she shut it off, the silence outside louder than anything inside. She scanned the quiet street, two-story homes with sagging porches, the occasional American flag faded from too many summers. But it wasn't just the architecture that unsettled her. She'd walked through bombed alleys in Juarez. She'd sat beneath the fluorescent glare of Capitol Hill, answering questions too sharp to be accidental. Yet nothing pricked her nerves quite like this town's stillness. Fairhill watched without blinking. That was always more dangerous than shouting. She stepped out, adjusted her dark blazer over a navy blouse whose top button had come loose. Small, but she noticed. It wasn't the kind of detail she usually missed. Not on the first day. Celeste reached for the suitcase in the trunk, a compact DHS-issued roller with reinforced seams, just official enough to suggest legitimacy, just nondescript enough to suggest nothing at all. Across the street, the deputy didn't move, just sat there, windows rolled up, sunglasses reflecting the brittle sun. She held his gaze for a beat too long before turning toward the rental house. The porch creaked under her heels. Before she could knock, the door opened. Mrs. Eileen Harper, thin, gray, and pale-eyed, offered a quick smile that didn't reach her cheeks. "You're earlier than I expected." "Better early than noticed," Celeste replied. Mrs. Harper handed her the keys. Old brass on a loop with a rubber tag labeled guest. Their hands touched for half a second. The older woman's gaze dropped to the suitcase. Something flickered in her eyes. Curiosity, maybe. Or memory. "I've had law enforcement stay here before," Harper said softly. "But they didn't carry themselves like you." Celeste didn't respond. She was already stepping inside. The house smelled of lemon oil and old rugs. A photograph of a man in uniform sat on the mantel, flanked by 2 dried roses in a jar. She paused just long enough to note the nameplate. Lieutenant Harold Harper, Fairhill Sheriff's Office, 1986 to 2001. Outside, wind teased a Confederate flag clinging to the bumper of a rusted pickup. Celeste's fingers tightened briefly on the keys. An hour later, she drove down Main Street. Every store looked preserved in amber, the diner with its flickering open sign, the hardware store with bags of salt stacked outside like sandbags. Her eyes caught a statue at the roundabout, General W.J. Fairhill astride a bronze horse, saber lifted westward, chin jutting into eternity. Someone had polished the plaque recently. She could still read it at a crawl, protector of Southern values. Just beyond that, a campaign banner flapped against a fence. Sheriff Colborn, keep Fairhill ours. She pulled into the coffee shop with a groan of gravel and felt the air change the second her shoes hit pavement. Inside, a bell dinged. 5 patrons, all white, all looking. A young boy dropped his donut at the sight of her badge clip flashing on her belt. His mother nudged him hard, whispered something into his ear. Celeste ordered a black coffee to go. The barista didn't speak, only nodded. Back in the SUV, she watched the reflection of the storefront in the rearview mirror. The boy was still watching her from the window. Not afraid, not curious, just waiting. On the drive home, the tension that had settled around her ribs began to tighten. A patrol car was following her. Same one. Same deputy. No lights. No siren. Just distance, enough not to be illegal, but close enough to mean something. She didn't speed, didn't brake hard, just took each turn with textbook precision. He mimicked every move. At the 4-way stop near Harper's, she let the SUV roll to a halt. Her blinker ticked. The cruiser stopped behind her. Then the lights flashed. Her eyes didn't leave the mirror. She reached slowly for her license, thumb brushing the open button on her blouse. It had come loose again. "Let's see who you really are," she muttered. "Out of the car! Hands up!" Colborn's voice shattered the morning stillness, cracking through the dry air like a rifle shot. His hand wasn't just on the gun. It was already drawn, aimed, finger twitching near the trigger guard. Spit clung to his bottom lip as he stepped forward. Celeste didn't move. The sun glared overhead, casting his shadow long and sharp across the cracked intersection. Millstone and Laurel, the quietest crossroad in Fairhill, now echoed with boots scraping asphalt and a single command carried on the edge of something dangerous. She remembered what she'd whispered to herself that morning while buttoning her blouse in the bathroom mirror. Stay invisible. The plan was to observe quietly, gather what she needed, avoid exposure. But that illusion had died the moment he'd called her girl. Colborne barked again. "I said, hands up, now!" Celeste exhaled, once. Slowly. Her hands rose, palms out. She didn't yell, didn't flinch. Her voice came low and even. "Officer, can you please explain the reason for this stop?" His boots thumped closer. "This your car?" he growled. "It's a rental," she said. "Registered under my name. I can show you the paperwork." "Trouble usually travels quiet," he sneered. "And black." The last word hung. She blinked once. The town's heat was dry, biting at her collarbone. Sweat beaded along the edge of her hairline, but she didn't wipe it. She didn't move at all, except to say, again, calm as breath, "My credentials are in the glove box." "I'm going to reach for them now, slowly." Across the street, behind a gauzy curtain, Eileen Harper lifted her phone. No sound, just a thumb tapping the screen. Celeste moved. Her hand eased toward the glove box, fingers precise. No jerks, no surprises. The moment the latch clicked, Colborne took half a step back. "I said no funny." She opened it all the way, reached in, and pulled out the black leather fold with her ID. "Special Agent Celeste Dawkins," she said, unfolding it. "Department of Homeland Security. Federal badge number F4621. He froze. His mouth opened slightly, then closed. He squinted at the badge, as if trying to will it into being fake. "That's a cute trick," he muttered finally. The gun didn't move. A dog barked once in the distance, then stopped. A school bus whined past a block away. Inside the car, the air conditioner ticked off. "You might want to put that down, officer," she said, eyes locking onto his. "For your sake." He blinked. Something cracked in his expression. Not fear, but calculation. Like a man realizing the poker hand he'd gone all in on wasn't going to win the table. Behind them, Mrs. Harper's porch creaked. Her phone vibrated once in her palm. Recording saved. By sunrise, Celeste wasn't a federal agent anymore. She was a problem from Washington. The phrase looped through every local headline, every whisper on Fairhill streets, every cold glance from strangers she hadn't met but who now seemed to know her name. In the space of a night, the narrative had shifted. Deputy Colborne's aggression had vanished from the official story, replaced by Sheriff Dale's press statement. The federal agent failed to follow simple instructions. "We support our deputies and stand against escalation." Fog blurred the windows of her rental home. It was Tuesday. 48 degrees at dawn. Celeste wrapped a sweater over her blouse, her hand brushing the same loose button she'd noticed the day before. It dangled slightly, like a secret about to fall. She stood in the bathroom, staring at her badge in the mirror. Its edges were still sharp, its weight still the same, but something inside her faltered. For just a second, she hesitated, one beat too long, before tucking it into her blazer pocket. By mid-morning, her presence in town had grown into a shadow. At the local courthouse, the assistant clerk offered her a single blank look, before walking away without a word. Two sheriff's deputies leaned against a parked cruiser, laughing too loudly when she walked past. Inside the Fairhill Coffee Company, the same spot where the donut had dropped from the boy's hand the day before, the temperature wasn't lower, but the air was colder. Conversations dulled. One man folded his newspaper and stood without finishing his coffee. Celeste took her order to go. Back at the house, she pulled up the town hall transcript that had been leaked to the local paper. Phrases were inserted like careful knives. She was the aggressor. She escalated. Our deputies acted professionally. None of the speakers had names she recognized. Most used initials. But the message was clear. A story was being written in real time, and she wasn't holding the pen. She didn't sleep. When dusk rolled in, the porch light flickered against the rising mist. A quiet knock. Then silence. Celeste opened the door to find no one. Just a small USB drive resting on the doormat. She stepped outside. Across the street, a curtain shifted. She knew who it was. Mrs. Harper hadn't said a word, but the drive was warm, as if passed from hand to hand in hesitation. Back inside, Celeste sat at her laptop, hesitating again at the sight of her reflection on the dark screen. Her fingers brushed the loosened button. Then, she plugged the drive in. 3 video files. She clicked the first. Grainy dashboard footage. Colborne yelling at a Latino teenager, dragging him from a car by the hoodie, shouting something about border rats. The second. A black woman crying on a sidewalk. Colborne's voice, loud off-screen. Threats, accusations, a gun pointed for far too long. The third. A young white man in camo pants, slurring his words, waving a knife. Colborne laughed, said, "You're good, brother," and let him go. None of it had aired. None of it had been acknowledged. The door creaked. She reached over, clicked off the screen. But no one entered. Later that night, her secure line rang, "Agent Mallory Pierce." A pixelated face in a gray hoodie, audio slightly scrambled. "Celeste," Pierce said, "Command's getting skittish. You stirred up more than they expected. They might pull you out." Celeste didn't flinch. "Let them try," Pierce sighed. "This isn't just Fairhill anymore. You know that, right?" "I do," she replied. After the call ended, she stared at the monitor again. The cursor blinked beside the files. Her fingers moved to a second device. A small, black, encrypted recorder she always carried. She hit record, sat up straighter. "Fairhill," she said, her voice steady, low. "You're not ready for what comes next." The headline read, "DC Agent Targets Small-Town Hero," and it was everywhere by breakfast. By the time Celeste opened her inbox, her name was already burned into every screen in Fairhill and beyond. The article ran above the fold in the Fairhill Gazette and 3 regional syndications. A photo of her at the coffee shop, her face mid-blink, caught between motions, sat beneath the headline. Sheriff Dale's quote was carefully measured. "We welcome all visitors to Fairhill, but we expect respect for our way of life. It's unfortunate when outside agents forget that." Celeste closed her laptop. She didn't need to read the rest. The sky outside was a uniform gray. Overcast. 58 degrees. But it felt colder inside her rental home. She turned the heat down the night before and hadn't touched the thermostat since. The silence inside was dense, the kind that made every creak of floorboards feel amplified. She sat on the edge of her bed, working a needle and thread through the loose top button of her blouse. It kept slipping. Her fingers, usually steady, missed the loop again. And again. Then the thread snapped. She stared at the limp string in her hand. 18 years with a badge. And now, one wrong pull of it on the wrong porch, and they wanted her buried for it. A chime echoed from her laptop. Email from DHS Internal Ethics. Subject, review initiated, Celeste Dawkins. You are under preliminary evaluation, pending further assessment. No greeting, no explanation, just a click to acknowledge link, and a silence that reeked of cowardice. She clicked the link. Her badge number auto-filled the form. She didn't blink. At 10:11 a.m., a secure call with Agent Mallory Pierce buzzed through. His face filled half the screen, dark rings under his eyes. "They want distance," he said, skipping greetings. "Your name is trending for all the wrong reasons." "They're cowards," she replied. Her voice was flat. "Celeste, DHS isn't designed to weather this kind of noise. You're not in Juarez anymore. These people know how to manipulate silence." He didn't say pull out, but the weight of it hung between every word. When the call ended, she didn't move. She sat there, still holding the broken thread. At 1:40 p.m., a black SUV rolled past her driveway, slowed, then moved on. At 2:07 p.m., her mailbox squeaked. Inside was a flyer with bold red font, "Fairhill needs heroes, not federal bullies." She filed DHS Form 701C that afternoon, official misconduct log against a local officer, citing body cam omissions, probable evidence tampering, and abuse of authority. She knew the form would flare up attention, would put a target on her from within. She filed it anyway. By dusk, the town's mood was sour. A boy on a bike rode past her driveway. He couldn't have been older than 10. "Traitor!" he yelled without slowing down. That night, eggs hit her front window. 4, maybe 5, in rhythmic succession. She didn't flinch. She just wiped it clean, slow and deliberate, her breath fogging against the glass. The knock came at 9:27 p.m., Mrs. Harper again. This time, no words, just a brown envelope placed gently on the porch. She didn't wait for acknowledgement. She just turned and walked away, her coat pulled tight, eyes forward like a soldier carrying classified orders. Inside the envelope, 3 USB drives, each marked with masking tape and dates: August 2020, January 2021, May 2022. Celeste plugged them in, one by one. The third file was the one. A 2020 traffic stop. The footage shaky, but clear enough. Colborn standing beside a black teenager pulled over for a broken taillight. The boy's hands were on the hood. The camera tilts as Colborn steps away, and for a split second, just one frame, his hand disappears into his vest pocket. Then, drugs found under the driver's seat. The kid wails. The cuffs click. The timestamp matched a conviction still on record. Celeste leaned back. Her chest rose once, then again. Her hand found her badge on the table, thumb brushing its corner. Then she reached for her phone. A new message flashed from Mallory. "Pull out?" She stared at the word. Her fingers hovered. Then typed, "I just loaded every clip onto ClearPath Hub. Let's see them bury that." By dawn, Fairhill was no longer just a town, it was a symbol. At exactly 7:15 a.m., Channel 6 News aired the video clip from the 2020 body cam footage. Celeste watched it from her kitchen table, the cracked porcelain coffee mug between her palms, still warm. Her laptop screen mirrored the segment. Colborn's voice, unmistakable and unfiltered, barking racial slurs while planting evidence. His badge glinted in the corner of the frame. Not as a shield, but a weapon. Within an hour, the clip had spread across 50,000 screens. The algorithm was doing what bureaucracy never could, make the silence deafening. Outside, Fairhill stirred to a different rhythm. The courthouse lawn was flanked by 3 news vans, each with satellite dishes reaching skyward like questions still unanswered. Reporters in pressed blazers rehearsed their openings, pacing through piles of wind-strewn leaves. And inside the courthouse? Doors were shut, blinds pulled, phones unanswered. Celeste didn't smile. She simply exhaled, then reached for the flash drive on her windowsill. The newest one. No note, no markings. But the contents were undeniable. Unedited body cam footage of Colborn calling a black student a rotten seed, then coaching another deputy on how to write the report. She encrypted the files, compiled a report, and uploaded it through the secure DOJ portal. Her submission pinged green, received. At 10:43 a.m., Agent Mallory Pierce messaged, "Dale suspended from Joint Task Force pending further inquiry." The screen blinked again. National coverage. Brace. Meanwhile, Harper called. "I'm ready," she said. Her voice was steady, stripped of its usual reserve. "For what?" "To be heard. No name. Just voice. But it's time." Kim Alvarez, the Charleston-based reporter who had arrived the night before, set up the audio silhouette session in a borrowed office above the Fairhill Library. Lights off, curtains drawn. Harper spoke for 17 minutes, detailing what she'd seen over the past 3 years. The stops, the shouting, the silent bribes, the way Colborn always got promoted despite complaints. Her voice cracked once, but not from fear. "It's not about being brave," she said, ending the interview. It's about not sleeping at night. At noon, Alvarez hosted a panel live on air, Policing in the Quiet South. She'd invited Sheriff Dale, but he declined, citing scheduling conflicts. His office released a typed statement. It was 3 paragraphs of deflection and 1 line that mattered. The department is cooperating fully with all federal inquiries. But the real moment came at the end of the segment. Alvarez turned to the camera. "Power," she said, pausing as her gaze sharpened. "You think a badge gives you power? For some, it's the reason you lose it." At 3:12 p.m., Dale was spotted entering a federal building in Columbia, South Carolina. His lawyer walked 2 steps behind. Cameras weren't allowed inside, but the stills taken before the glass doors closed showed him looking smaller than he ever had in uniform. That night, Celeste returned to her rental. The air felt thinner, the street quieter, but not safer. She scanned the porch, unlocked the door, and stepped inside. There, on the floor just beyond the threshold, was an envelope. No return address, no seal. Inside, a single sheet of official DHS letterhead. Commendation in recognition of investigative integrity and federal procedural excellence. No name, no signature, no explanation, just typed acknowledgement. And silence. She stood there in the doorway, holding the letter with one hand and her chipped mug with the other, the same one she'd used since day 1 in Fairhill. Now glued along the seam, stained at the rim, but still functional. Still hers. At 7:03 a.m., Deputy Colborn was arrested. The click of the handcuffs was louder than anyone expected, not because of the metal, but because of what it meant. He stood on the steps of the Fairhill Police Department, still in uniform. No words, no resistance. A state trooper took his arm, and for the first time in a long time, Colborn didn't pull away. His eyes were bloodshot, not from tears, but from the weight of a system that had finally turned inward. At 7:09 a.m., Sheriff John Dale submitted his resignation, a 1-line email sent to the county board, citing, quote, health and family considerations. The investigation would continue, but the power was gone. The office, the badge, the control, stripped in under 10 minutes. At 7:11 a.m., Celeste closed her suitcase. Her hands moved with quiet precision, folding the last of her button-downs, slipping a flash drive into the inner lining. She didn't speak. The house around her, temporary as it was, had already emptied itself of warmth. The walls still held shadows from the week. Conversations, plans, doubt. But she left no trace. No mug, no files, not even a note, Mallory Pierce called. "There's a follow-up post in Atlanta," she offered, carefully neutral. "You'd be leading." Celeste didn't answer right away. She listened to the static in the line, to the background hum of an office she no longer wanted to walk into. Then she said, "Tell them thank you. But I already led where it counted." She dropped off her DHS clearance file at the regional office, unannounced, unsigned. The front desk clerk didn't even recognize her until she turned to leave. By then, she was already reaching for her keys. At noon, the Greyhound terminal was nearly empty. A boy kicked a soda can along the sidewalk. A mother juggled a diaper bag and a crying toddler. Life moved on, not for Fairhill's sake, but despite it. Celeste placed her suitcase in the hold without a tag. She didn't tell anyone her destination. Maybe not even herself. She climbed aboard, chose a window seat near the back, and leaned her head against the cool glass. She didn't cry, didn't smile. But in her coat pocket, she found a folded piece of paper. It was from Mrs. Harper. "Thank you for being the voice I wasn't brave enough to be." No signature, no address, just ink on stationery that smelled faintly of lavender and dust. The bus hissed and lurched forward. Outside, Fairhill didn't wave. No one lined the streets. No one apologized. But no one denied it either. The silence itself had shifted. Not gone. Just altered. Like soil after a storm. Celeste looked down. Her blouse, the same one from her first day in town, still had the missing button. The thread dangled, stubborn and unsewn. She touched the gap lightly, her fingers tracing the space where something used to be. And then, for the first time in days, she smiled. Just faintly. Just enough. Not everything broken needs repair. What they didn't expect wasn't her badge. It was who she truly was. She didn't leave Fairhill with applause or headlines. Just the whisper of bus tires and a button still missing. Celeste had shown them who she was, not with volume, but with unwavering silence, action, and proof. Justice didn't roar in this story. It echoed quietly in every resignation, every recorded truth that no one could unsee. Power unchecked had met resistance unshaken. Because sometimes, what undoes a system isn't noise. It's the stillness of someone who refuses to look away.